All right. Again, good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm Julius Covington. I'll give you guys a message that really comes from a whole synopsis of Acts 17, 10 through 12. And I want to kind of pick up right where Jamie left off at last week. But first, before I do that, I want to put in you guys perspective of who's doing this. This is Paul, and he had some other brothers with him. The one we're reading out of is when he had Silas with him. And so I got a quick question. Who thinks they traveled? This was facts to me that blew my mind when I was reading this. And I was like, okay. So who thinks they traveled the furthest to get to church, whether it be Sunday or Wednesday? I'm assuming that somebody either on the west side, or not even the west side, in Arlington or on the north side. Green Cove, how far is that?
Oh, she has
35 minutes? About the north side, nobody else? What you got, Anthony?
Time-wise?
Yeah.
So around 40.
Around 40? 45, 40 minutes.
Okay, just put it in perspective. So when blind scales fell off his eyes, we all know he immediately went out, started preaching the word. All right, so his first journey, and keep in mind, I want you to, who has on sandals in here? Or flip-flops? All right, can you walk all day in those? Just give me a yes or no answer. You can walk all day, okay. Yeah, you're shaking your head. All right, so his first journey, they traveled 1,581 miles by foot. Y'all can travel though in those. You flip-flops, right? Chris? You can go walk 1,581 miles. Oh!
And these are members,
So those comfortable. They didn't have comfortable. What? They didn't have comfortable flip-flops or sandals back then. Kind of like what Carissa had on. That's too much sole too. They probably had on no thicker than your fingernail with a leather strap across the top. That's 1,581 miles. We didn't read about that yet. Well, we kind of skipped over that. We're on this journey, the second journey. Yeah, second journey. Anybody got a guess on the second journey? So, 2,500. That's real, not at all. They doubled it. They went 3,050 miles. 2,500 on foot, the rest by boat. So this is what we're on. This is the second time he went out and he was still preaching. And we're on the back half of this. This is when they're going from Thessalonica to Berea to Athens on the back half. And then you went from Berea to Athens on boat, so that's part of the boat. So to put it all in perspective, I just want you to see how far this man had to travel. Him and the guys had to travel to get the word out. Just to get the word out. And they had missions. They said when they got there, they preached. They didn't get there, we'll eat, we'll stay at Ramada Inn, give it 2 or 3 days. I like to catch up on this show because I've been traveling. And then I'll go out and preach. They showed up, they hit the ground running. So from Thessalonica to Berea, which isn't long, it's about 45 miles. That seems easy to us. But on foot, that's 11 hours. That's about a 2-day walk because you need to take a break. And then we went from Berea to Athens. They traveled 249 miles by boat. And back then they had sailboats. So that was 81 hours, 2.5 days. So in a span of 4.5 days, he went to 3 major cities and was preaching the word. So let's get into the Bible talk. Amen. All right. So Jamie last week, he left off on the 3 E's. I want to pick up right where he left off at. Well, he gave you the 3 E's. Eagerly examine every day. And he said, don't just check the box. Don't be people that just check the box. And the thing that grabbed my attention when Carol sent me the notes, he said, do we have God's attention?
Yes. Great point.
So today I want to say, if we think we have God's attention, how are we getting God's attention? And what are some things that we're doing to get his attention?
Amen.
If anybody wants to answer, you can. I'll move on if you don't. So reading the scripture now, it comes out of Acts 17, 10 through 12.
Amen.
And keep in mind, I said this is the back half of the second stretch where they went 3,050 miles total. So this was the back half of it. This wasn't even all of it. So he went from Thessalonica, now he's in Berea. And when you read right here in verse 10, it says, as soon as it was night, the believers sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. So it was night and they was in Thessalonica. And what was happening, it was they were going to preach to some of the Jews, and some of them got riled up and didn't want to hear what they were saying. So they were saying, we should go out and kill these dudes. We should go out and stone these dudes and drag them out. So the Jews that were there that were listening, they were like, we need to protect this guy. Let's get him out of the city. So they got him out and they sent him to Berea. On arriving there, they went to the Jewish synagogue. It didn't say he stopped and got coffee. On arriving there, they went to the Jewish synagogue. Now the Berean Jews were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica, for they received the message with great eagerness and examined the scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true. As a result, many of them believed, as did also a number of prominent Greek women and Greek men. So that's huge to me that God even he called these people noble. So why do you think he called them noble? Why do you think God looked at them and called them noble? Jamie kind of gave you the answer last time. Go ahead, Russia.
Because instead of being like the Thessalonians who just didn't want to hear the word, they not only wanted to hear it, but they took it a lot further. They were like, they wanted to make sure they were saying was true. They eagerly examined the message every day. They were diligent about it. They were urgent about it, and as opposed to trying to close their ears to the message.
Right.
I was going to say probably because people in Thessalonica, they probably didn't understand everything he was saying. So a lot of people, when they don't understand, they immediately shut down. Like, okay, well, one, I haven't been hearing this my whole life. So what if they've been told something else and they just don't refuse to believe it? Like the people in Berea, whether they knew it or didn't know it, they still wanted to go back. Like, okay, yes, they're saying this, but let me see if what he's saying is true, where he's getting it from.
That's pretty good, because they were in Greece, in the area of Greece. So some heard about Jesus dying, some didn't. Most people in Thessalonica did, so I want you to remember that.
Amen.
I think that it shows their commitment and their dedication, because they didn't have Bibles like we did, so it took effort to do it daily. I know that's one thing that Matthew and I also had about, because I was like, they don't even have it. We didn't have access to that, and we even get to have a Bible that you can get to and read, but yet they have to actually put some forth effort to go and happen every day what they were being told.
Yep. Go ahead, Ross.
I don't know the history behind this, but when I think of putting it in today's terms, all of us from time of infancy till today, we have heard about Jesus and different things. And I feel like these people, they said they're examining to see if they're true. Typically, when you hear different things, if you haven't looked at it for yourself, you can be told one thing when you're Baptist, another thing when you're Methodist. It's our responsibility. And I think that's what they did. They said, let me examine to see what this guy is saying is true, because they probably heard so many different things. That Jesus has come and died, and different people tell different stories. They scatter and all these other stuff. I don't know if to be true.
So, like I said, you want to go ahead real quick? Okay, so like I was saying, that's what you had was on point.
Yep.
They heard about all this Old Testament. That's what they were examining, the Old Testament, which Paul was giving to them. But they also heard about this guy named Jesus here that died. We heard about the temple splitting in half. We heard about the clouds coming over the land.
Yeah.
But we weren't there to see that. And now what you're telling us is you came over here from from Thessalonica, saying that this actually happened. And you're giving us stuff on this Old Testament. Now we haven't read this, so let's go look at this. So every day we sat down with Paul and we went back and said, hey, it matches up every day. That matches up. Okay, well, we in Isaiah now? That matches up. Speaking of that, being in Isaiah, I want you to turn to Isaiah 66 too.
Okay.
Because God gave us the foundation of the people that he's looking for. This is a reason why he could sit here and say these people were noble.
Wow.
Amen.
So, Sierra, what you said is that You said they had heard different things and they were like, I don't want to sit here and hear this at the time. So God gave us the foundation of how we can be getting his attention. Like if you're a teacher, or many of y'all are a coach or something, you see a player that's giving it all and going all out for you, you're gonna be like, okay, I haven't talked to this person. Let me come over and wrap my arms around them. You're doing a great job. I'm looking at you now. So reading 66 verse 2, it says, has not my hand made all these things? And so they came into being, declares the Lord. This part right here. These are the ones I look on with favor. Those who are humble and contrite in spirit and who tremble at my word.
Come on now.
So I looked up the definition of contrite and I was sorrowful in spirit. Those people in Thessalonica, they didn't want to hear that because they didn't want to say Jesus' death was put on us. Some did, some didn't. It was a split down the middle. Some did, some didn't. Some didn't, let's throw this guy out of here, let's kill him. Some that did, let's help this guy get over to Berea so he can teach this same message because they need to hear the same thing when the temple court split in two. So they had a sorrowful spirit. And he says, these are the ones that are with favor with me. You have a sorrowful spirit and you tremble at my word. He went over to Berea, was speaking to the Berean Jews, and they were scared. They had a reverent fear for God. We did this, and you're saying we did this? Let me go see if we did this. Or what he's saying is actually true. We're the ones that put him up there. All right, let's keep examining. Let's do what we need to do to get this going.
Amen.
So, listening to that and looking at that, I got another one that links it all together in Proverbs 1:5-7. On that they were already gaining God's eye because they wanted to do something about what they did to Jesus, not knowing that they did it to Jesus. So in Proverbs 1:5-7. This is the Bereans, technically. It says, let the wise listen and add to their learning. They listen and they add it. And let the discerning get guidance. They were discerned, they got guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Amen. But fools despise wisdom and instruction.
Come on now.
So you got to divide between Thessalonica and Berea. And they're all Jewish. That's why God sat there and looked down and said, now, I like these ones. These ones I can get with. They already have a fear for me. They want to learn. They want to be guided. So Paul go there and do this. While the other half of Thessalonica helped him get there as well. Like I said, that's a lot of traveling that he had to do. Got right off the ship. Oh, that was a walk. Got right off the walk overnight, got there and started preaching. So it's no mystery on reading these two passages, reading these two scriptures on why God called these people to be noble. And even some other versions, I think Alicia has the New English version, it says they were open-minded. The Bereans were open-minded to the word. Yeah. So they were willing to learn what was going on.
Amen.
I'm going to move to my second point, but does anybody want to chime in?
That's awesome. Very good.
Anthony.
I think sometimes when you're talking about them right now, how they were open-minded, we can be like that here now time as well. Not like here in the church, but in general as a people. Like we have our thoughts that are already in our head has been put there all those years. And so when someone comes with more information, we're like, yeah, we're not really trying to hear that. But I like what you're saying, but I'm just not paying attention to what you're saying because we already have our own thoughts already in mind. Versus trying to see what you're actually saying is true, because a lot of people never go back and try to research it, they just take it at face value. Or they just decide not to accept it at all. Like, we're gonna find out, I guess, we don't know that's the night in America, so.
That's awesome.
I thought about what you said about having God's attention, because I think about at my job, like we literally just process orders all day. So a person that's doing the bare minimum, like our quota is 165 orders a day. So if you're doing just that, you're not gonna catch the attention of like supervisors and stuff, but going exceeding those numbers, they look for those people like, oh, because they give us bonuses and stuff for exceeding our numbers. And when I equate that to my spiritual walk with God, if I'm just like Mr. James said, checking the box, I'm not catching God's attention, but if I'm doing serving as I'm supposed to do, loving us, that's the stuff that's going to catch God. And I think about when it says about us getting to God, he's like, I never knew you. You could be just checking the box and God still never know you. It's those extra steps you take in your walk.
Amen. Yeah.
I also thought like with my job, like, cause we all have like, quote unquote specific job that we do. And sometimes like the manager will be like, oh, can you go do help with dishes or go help with this? And sometimes I'm thinking that's not my job description. Like, I did what I had to do and I'm ready to go home. It's 10 o'clock, like I want to go wash dishes, like stuff like that. But it's like, God sees the extra that we do. Like, it's like Kiki said, it's not enough to do just the bare minimum. And I can actually, because not saying that I want to be there just to be a manager, but like even if they were to look at me to get a raise or anything, they're like, okay, Sierra can do this, she's well diverse, and that's what will help you like move along and progress. So like in the spiritual walk, you can't progress. God can't work with you like how you said He could work with the Bereans because they were eager to do more and eager just to go out their way. So just you can't really progress if you're just doing the bare minimum.
Amen. Amen.
Darcel and then Royal afterwards.
It amazes me how fired up they were to want to examine and, you know, reading every day just motivates me to be more fired up and want to be in my word, which I do, but just be more excited about it to want to learn. And like the Lord said, if you see me, you'll find me. That's what they did.
Amen.
Go ahead, Royal.
Yeah, I was thinking about when he was emphasizing about the Bereans being a more noble character and how Paul was preaching the word. They went back to the examining scriptures. A lot of that stuff was already prophesied. They went back to the story where Paul was already preaching. I think Paul just pointed out to them, this is what we're talking about. This is what's going to happen, that Jesus is going to be crucified. We talk about that in Isaiah and a lot of other scriptures. So I think he pointed that out to them, and I think they were even more convicted.
Yep, that's what. Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, I like what everybody said. This is awesome. And but I think about what Roslyn said. I'm trying to mind because you can grow if you do. You take what she said and then apply it. Well, remember she was saying, I don't know, but it seems. What did you say, Roslyn? You said you didn't know. What now?
I said I don't know the history behind it. That was just
That's it. I don't know the history of it, but it seems. That's good, because now what happened, your mind is where it seemed like it must have did this in order to take you to the next level of your faith. You say that and then go try to find it. And when you go try to find it, you find what you felt in your spirit. You find, I knew that's what he was doing. It lifts your faith. So hear your spirit speaking to you when you're going, when you hear that, you see that calls you to examine it.
Yes.
Listen to your spirit. It's telling you, look into it. You know, like on Sunday, y'all hear me, it hit me Sunday. Sometimes some people are preaching. When I was preaching, remember, they took that guy by all the strong men, took Nebuchadnezzar ordered that they run to throw them in, and as they got to the furnace, what happened to them? They died. But then when the king went to the furnace to say, come out of the furnace, he didn't get burned. And then he go, wait a minute. It hit me while I was preaching, y'all. I wonder why God let him do that. There's a reason. I'm going to see again what God. So it makes you want to go back and examine. And you got to listen to that spirit allowed to make you grow. Amen.
So, to my next point, which is what he said, why it's important to read so that we can feel our knowledge and our faith, just like they did. And to the point of, like Kiki was saying, that I'm going over this, but you can read the story of Job. Job did things to get God's attention, but he was just doing what he was known to do, being a man of God. And God used him as, hey, Satan, have you considered my servant Job? Go test him. At the end of the day, we don't want to be the ones that are just barely skating by. Okay, well, read today, prayed today. We got church Wednesday, been there, communion, tithes, singing, hard fighting soldier, clap twice, good to go. Rinse and repeat. for the rest of my life. 52 weeks a year. Year 1 goes down. I've been a Christian for 1 year. Rinse and repeat. Year 2, 104 weeks. Year 3, 156 weeks. Keep going on and on and on. God, well, you checked the box, son. Well, you told me to, that's what you told me to do, was read. But you've been checking the box the whole time. You didn't get my attention. You didn't do things above and beyond. I didn't look down and say, consider this person here. Go ahead, Morgan.
So what I'm picking up is checking the box is your heart's not in it. So I guess, well, I can tell God he's not gonna be looking for you because he'll know if your heart's in it or not. If you're checking the box, your heart's not in it, so he's not gonna be looking for people whose heart is not in it.
Amen. That's right.
I'm sorry, one more thing.
Yeah, I'm moving on.
Because Jesus could have came down here and be like, you know what, I'm Jesus. Like, I'm here, and I'm gonna die, and that's gonna be it. But Jesus, he took the time to even get baptized. Like, something that people don't see is like a big thing, but for Jesus, like, he had no sin, like, he did nothing wrong, and he took the time to get baptized to bring himself to our level. And like, even though God had his attention on Jesus, he still strived to get God's attention in that way.
It's a give and take. He's going to have our focus, but we need to give him the reason to focus on us. So, to the second point, it's important to read so that we feel our knowledge and our faith. So now, the Bereans listening to all of this, growing up and hearing these stories, like Royale was saying, that they heard about the Old Testament, they heard about people prophesying. Let's turn over to 1 Timothy 6, 3 through 5.
Okay. Amen.
1 Timothy 6, 3 through 5. So relating this into today's terms, this really spoke to me when I was reading this. And this could have been them if they didn't go back and examine scriptures. And it says, if anyone teaches otherwise and does not agree to the sound instruction of our Lord Jesus Christ and to godly teaching, they are conceited and understand nothing. They have an unhealthy interest in controversies and quarrels about words that result in envy, strife, malice, talk, evil suspicions, and constant friction between people and between people of corrupt mind who have been robbed of the truth and who think that godliness is a means to financial gain. That could have been Paul. And how do I was trying to find this out, but I have no clue if some of those Thessalonians knew that was that didn't know what he was talking about, so didn't want to look it up, so they thought it was a false teacher, or if the ones that looked it up were saying, hey, this guy's legit. Same as the Bereans came back and said, now we've heard people come over here and teach to us falsely, so let's match up what he's saying to us. Well, it matches. Let's keep going back daily. And another one to reiterate this topic is 2 John 1, 7 through 11. 2 John 1, 7 through 11.
Amen.
I say this because many deceivers who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh have gone out into the world. Any such person is a deceiver and the anarchist. And the Antichrist. I'm trying to look for 11 through 11. Okay. Watch out that you do not lose what we have worked for. In some scriptures say what you have worked for, but that you may be rewarded fully. Anyone who runs ahead and does not continue in the teaching of Christ does not have God. Whoever continues in the teaching has both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not take them into your house or welcome them. Anyone who welcomes them shares in their wicked work. It's a lot of power behind God telling us that we should know his word
Yeah.
and not so be easily deceived
Yeah.
by people who he says are gonna go out and speak in Jesus' name on my behalf and not know a thing of what they're talking about. But if we're not there to challenge them, if we're not there to, if they're coming with their own word, as it says, if anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not welcome into your house. So if they don't bring this teaching, and you say, hey, well, I hear you saying that, show me in the Bible where that's at. But it's not, that can't happen. Well, I heard this from my aunt's uncle's grandma. Well, from what I've been reading here, like the Berean Jews, and I went back and I studied it because that's what we're supposed to do.
That's right.
We're supposed to sit here and read. I see that's totally different from what God says. So if we sit here every Sunday and Pastor Mark reads to us and not a single one of us have Bibles in here but him, how do we know what Bible he's reading out of?
That's right.
How do we know if it's even true? How do we know it's not a blank book? Because we haven't seen the inside of it that he wrote in, and it's only one word in it, the end, on every page.
That's a great point.
He's making this up. And that's what we have to be strong enough to continue to read daily, to fuel our knowledge and to fuel our faith so that we know what God's saying to us. So the greatest example of this, anybody raise their hand and think of who's the best deceiver in the Bible? Satan. Genesis 3,
He got verse
4 through 5. In the beginning. Genesis 3, 4 through 5. And keep this in perspective. I know Eve couldn't read the Bible. They didn't have the Bible to read. But she literally had a link with God. Both of them, Adam and Eve. In the garden. So I knew that when I was reading this. Genesis 3, 4 through 5. So this is getting ready to eat the fruit off the tree. And it says, this is Satan. You will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So was he lying? Because God told her, when you eat from this tree, you'll die. He was like, well, certainly you won't die. God's not going to sit here and let you die. And she was like, well, there's apple right there.
You right.
Right. I ain't gonna die. Nah, he didn't say I would die. Well, you know when you eat from the tree, I'm looking up at her. You know when you eat from it, you'll certainly be knowledge. Well, I'm not gonna die.
That's a good sound effect.
Now you're dead. You had the word, now you're spiritually dead. You don't have the fuel for knowledge. You don't have the fuel for your faith because you're listening to false teaching. You're listening to a word that's not true, and you're also not looking it up yourself. So here's some things that people say. Hey, you can miss church today. It's only midweek. God knows your heart, bro. Come on out here to the movies with me. Anybody heard that one?
Yeah, man.
Go ahead, bro. I got some. I'm gonna go.
This scripture, I'm glad you pointed this out, but this reminds me how constant the devil is. This is why we have to be in our word constantly, because he's going to constantly lie to us and try to get us off track. Right. Because it can be the simplest thing. That's all he needs for you to get off track. So, man, brother.
Go ahead, Ross.
And I also say I've kind of studied this out, and it's I call it splitting hairs, but in Eve, when she was talking, she's saying to the serpent that God told them they should eat from the tree and that they must not touch it. But God didn't say that. If you look up in 10, it says you're free to eat from any tree of God, but you must not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He didn't say anything about touching. She added that. So I just want to point that out.
She's adding God's word.
Go ahead, Sia.
And how he didn't like lie, like blatantly lie. but he took what God said and like twisted it in a way. Like, you know how you can say something, but your tone can change the complete meaning of it?
Yeah.
That's basically
Like a tone.
what he did.
Yeah. So which God spoke on when he said it in 1 Timothy. People will come here preaching in my name in hopes of looks of financial gain. They'll be saying the right things to make you, okay, yeah, that sounds right. That feels pretty good.
And it was like when,
It's a half truth. But they're using something to back it up. So when you go examine it, that's why I love how he gave us the Bereans, for example. They say you're going to be torn between some things. You may be torn, but when somebody gives it to you, go look it up. And what they're saying is true, go back to them again.
Come on now.
And if what they're saying is true, go back to them again. Because they're feeding you what's supposed to be giving you knowledge and faith. Go ahead, girl.
And just to add, I think you're going on a good point how people can use certain scriptures to benefit them. But then when you start to read the Bible and put it together, you can't just, as Mark always said, you can't just pick one scripture or a couple of scriptures so it benefits you to justify your sin, to justify why you do the things that you do. Because then it's like God doesn't only just look at one part of the Bible. He has the whole Bible that he's going off of. So we have to, and some scriptures can seem contradictory until you start to dig deeper.
Yes.
And then you can see, okay, this is why this happened. This is why he says this.
So another thing that we might hear, like I said, the first one is you can miss church today. It's only midweek. Even though the Bible says when the body meets, you should meet. It's only midweek. God knows your heart. Come on, hang out with us today. All right. Hey, we can go out on, the girls and boys, we can go out on a couple of dates at first and then I'll come to church. Trust me. Y'all heard that one before?
Come on, preacher.
Oh, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one. Another one. It's so, bruh, believe me, it's okay to go off on a rant sometimes. You got to cut somebody out. You can't hold all that stuff in forever. You heard that one before? Am I the only one that's ever heard that? I thought I was making these things up. That was only 3 things. I could think of a lot, but I only put 3 things in. Anybody else got? I want to hear one more. If anybody else wants.
So I think about people we meet and we want to invite them to church, and they tell us where they go to church. We know what they believe. We know what they believe isn't sound, but in the sake of being their friend, we'll still go visit where we know it's not preaching the truth. Instead of saying, nope, this word says that's not the truth, I'm not going to go, but because we want to be their friend, we'll go and visit, but we already know where they believe it's not preaching the truth. It's not telling the truth of the Bible.
Go ahead, Carol. And then,
I know some people who just tithe, or they do a good deed a month because they God has blessed me, so I'm going to bless this person. So that's their connection, that's their good deeds, so they feel like now God is pleasing them.
Actually, I had this conversation with my coworker today, and I don't know how we got on God. I was talking about like homeless people and how I have a heart for them and he called me crazy. He's like, well, y'all Christians, which he's a Christian himself, but that was a little interesting. But I hear a lot from like a lot of people, when you get into like the topic of sin, they're like, but you can mess up. Like you can mess up and God will still love you.
Well, that's perfect.
You can still, like God know you will mess up, so like I can still do this. And I'm like, no, I don't think you can. But I hear that a lot. You still think that you just can mess up whenever you want to mess up.
Yep. Anybody else? All right. So we know, like I was saying, those little examples. You can come hang out with us. It's only midweek. Let's go out on a few dates, and then I'll come to church. Believe me, I love you. Believe me. It all sounds right, but it's a false truth. It's false in nature, but it sounds true. And we have to know our word in order to be able to discern that right from wrong. So the third point here, final point, is that reading our Bibles and examining our scriptures can affect the people around us. So I just want to touch on the fact that this it's not a suggestion to read your Bible. 1 Timothy 4:16 reads, watch your life and your doctrine closely. It doesn't just say watch your life closely. He said your doctrine, the thing that he gave you. watch that closely. The only way we're going to watch the Bible closely is not literally just sit it on a podium or sit it on the front desk at your house, and when you walk in, you're looking at your Bible. I've engaged because the enemy has been defeated. I've looked at my Bible. It says Holy Bible. Amen. Doesn't make sense. Some stuff that happens, just when you put it there, it just doesn't make sense. He says, watch it closely, preserve in them, which means to hold, have a longevity in them.
Yes.
Persevere in them and have a longevity in them. Because if you do, you will save both yourself and your hearers.
Yes.
So now when I think of the people in Berea and they read every day, I think of the person that got them that word.
Amen.
The person that traveled 3,050 miles the second time. The person that traveled 1,536 miles the first time. Because he read his Bible. He watched his life and his doctrine closely. Even though he did some wrong. But when he said, okay, God, you made me a Christian, I'm moving on. I'm pressing forward. He watched it closely. He was able to share with them. The Bereans read every single day with him, examined every single day with their priests and temple people, and came back and said, hey, what you're saying is true. So turn over to Acts 17, verse 4. Acts 17, verse 4.
Come on, Judge.
And we'll see how it affected other people. So Acts 17, verse 4. And it says, so this when he was in Thessalonica preaching. And then there were some reading, some, like I said, some Jews believed, some didn't. And then it says, some of the Jews were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a large number of God-fearing Greeks and quite a few prominent women. And then chapter 17, verse 12, right in that same scripture at the bottom, it says, when they examine the scriptures every day, that one, verse 12, it says, as a result, many of them believed, as did also a number of prominent Greek women and Greek men. So people around them were affected.
Yep.
People around them said, hey, what are y'all studying? Y'all life is changing. What's going on here? Well, let me read to you what's going on here. And they studied. So it's up to us to be able to read our Bibles like that on a daily basis, examining eagerly every day, to be able to affect people around us because we know what it says. We have that knowledge. We have that faith that I know what God's telling me is true. And the reason I wanted to focus on the Greeks is because researching this, the Greeks were looking for things to worship. They had their many gods.
That's right.
But Greeks were split into two. They follow philosophers.
That's right.
So you had a philosopher named Epicurus, who was before them. He put a philosophy out, and a lot of them followed that. And the goal of that philosophy was happiness is the ultimate goal of life. And then you had another philosopher named Zeno, who they called themselves the Stoic people. And their philosophy was that you have to be more rational than emotional. So they both believed in many gods, but they both had different routes to get to those gods. So last two things I want to read, when they were looking for things to worship and they seen the Berean Jews doing this, and then the next half of the stretch is when Paul went over to Athens, which is the major city of Greece at the time. And he said in verse 17, and Acts 17, verse 22 through 23, Paul then stood up in the meeting of Areopagus and said, people of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with the inscription, to an unknown God. So are you ignorant of the very thing you worship?
Come on.
And this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. Then he went on to say that God doesn't need temples built by human hands. He doesn't need anything from you. So in saying that, when he did that, and when he was in Berea preaching, they were looking for stuff. We have to be that example because he gave us a tool to use so that we're not ignorant of God, that we know who we serve, that we know the word that he put down, that he know the path that he laid before us. And then off in 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17. If anybody wants to read that last one for me. 2 Timothy 3:16-17. Go ahead, Ross.
All scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work.
Amen. So let's use God's scriptures to do these things that Paul did for the Bereans. And let's do that for the people that we have around us in the modern day. Amen. To God be the glory.
Man, that is awesome. Every time our brother come up and our two brothers really inspire us about getting God's word. And then to close out with, I call that a memory verse. All truth God breathed, useful teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training righteousness, so that the man of God be thoroughly equipped for every good work. So we need to know that. And that is called. But brother, thank you for inspiring us and teaching us. And something he said that left me, I'm going to really continue to look at. I've always felt this way. I never let myself get caught in arguing about God's words or even invite people to my home who don't believe in God's word. I would stand at the door and I would read the scriptures to you, and you try to pervert God's word, then God bless you. I'm going to pray for you. That's 2 John verse 10. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this doctrine, do not receive him into your house, nor greet him. For he greets him, shares in his evil deeds. That's what Scripture says. Wow. And you got to be careful inviting people to your home who perverts God's words. Yes. Like they don't believe in God's words, so they try to pervert it with you and try to convince you against God's words. Come on, you don't like people to do that to you. It's a sin. You know, these people who believe these stuff that's not doctrine, not biblical, these religions. And that's what was going on in the Bible. A lot of religion was going on back in the day. It still happens today. All these religions going on with these beliefs that are not biblical. That's right. You know, and I have never gotten to letting the Jehovah's Witness or anybody sit down in my home and go through and try to confuse me on the Bible. Any part of kill insight like that. That's right. No. We can talk. That's right. We can talk right here at the door, but now when you start going off of that stuff, that is not biblical. And I'm not here to argue with you. You have a good day. I'm not going to argue God's words. That's right. And if you refuse to accept God's word, I cannot make you. Only God can move people's hearts. That's not my job. That's right. We offer the word, and they refuse to accept the word. You shake the dust off your feet, and you move. Don't let them catch you up and confuse you and rob you of. Take this almost like Brittany mentioned me today about. She said, I still remember the message you gave about the parable of the soil and the seed and how a bird. Some people can take the word out of your heart. We were talking about that day, Brittany. Yeah. They're devastating, and that can happen. You can stand like you believe, and all of a sudden you sit down with somebody who's teaching stuff that's not biblical, and all of a sudden you going, oh. Wait a minute, I didn't know that. And you get pulled in the wrong direction. Listen, I've been preaching 32 years, and even within the church, I've had people say they're Christians and years later start believing some crazy stuff. And I had to tell people as a minister who they were part of the church with me, even in RCC, what you say, that's not what we taught you, and that is not biblical. And if you don't believe what's in this Bible, you gotta go find a place to worship. Because you won't bring that here. That's not biblical. That's right. I'm not gonna allow you. You became a Christian, now you want to act like you don't know what a Christian is. Right. Come on. And now you want to say you ain't got to come to the Middle East, you ain't got to do these things, you ain't got to. Where you get that from? Right. I told this one brother, I said, you know what? Go find people who believe what you believe. Yeah. Because it's not us. That's right. That's right. It's not us. Shell House for our midweek. We have midweek dinners and spend some time together. They don't do the lessons. So please go and have a great time. Pray for my wife and I. We'll be in Mexico next week. We'll be here Sunday for Father's Day, and then we'll leave Monday to go pick up his mom, and then we'll be leaving like 3 in the morning to head to Tampa Airport. And then we fly out early in the morning. We gotta go through, because we're going overseas, you gotta go through some stuff. Customs and everything. Oh, gee. Pray for it, brother. We gotta go through all this stuff, but it's gonna work out somehow. But keep us prayed up. And the area the guys let you know, the area we're going to, where they live is not the city. It's more where you are actually serving people. You know, it's the country. You know, and little villages. Third world. So we praying, and she said they don't have roads, don't for us to make sure we bring tennis shoes. They have no smooth roads, no nothing like that. And I said, well, do we have a Walmart? We'll get something, you know. I got a box, they said Walmart. They have one down the road, but we'll get there if we need it. So we have some stores that we can purchase and stuff. We're not taking credit cards and nothing like that. We just don't, we're American on an island, and my wife and I will be sticking out. And so we don't want no trouble. We'll always have a translator with us, and we're looking forward to having a great time, amen. And really looking forward to serving the people, and I'm looking forward to working with my translator, and I'm looking forward to, I'm praying that next year they all come here. You know, so I'm looking forward to sharing. I want to thank Louisa again for translating and studying the Bible with someone. For doing that, and she has not stopped talking about that. You know, and I'm looking forward to meeting the young lady who became Christian to translate. Well, I'm a soul, you can teach me a few words like what happened. You know, like I talked today, I'm gonna learn a few words. So I'm having a good time. And so we look forward to doing that. So please pray for that. Next, so in 2 weeks, our memory verse in 2 weeks is Brittany got our memory verse. You can get our memory verse 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, it's Psalms 100.
Psalms 100. Is that one shout for joy to the Lord?
Yeah, shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness, come before him with joyful songs. Oh goodness. Know that the Lord is, okay, can we start over?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Psalms 100, 1 through 5. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is God, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations.
So for the Lord is good, or for the Lord is God?
Oh,
for the Lord is good.
It is.
For the Lord is good.
Thank you. My bad.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. The Lord is good. But the Lord is God. And his faithfulness continues through all generations. So Psalm 100, 1 through 3, 1 through 5. So we'll do that in 2 weeks. So we put that